Right. Well, we're at Churches for Middle East Peace, and on behalf of our Catholic Advisory Council, are so grateful to each of you for being with us today. As I mentioned, this is the second installation in our larger mini course, which my colleague Julie will share about broadly later. But today we're talking about building for a peaceful future, the state of education in Palestine. And so we are so grateful to our two panelists who we'll introduce to you shortly. My name is Destiny Magnet. I'm the Programs and Outreach Manager here at Churches for Middle East Peace. If you're new to Churches for Middle East Peace or CMEP in our work, we are a broad ecumenical Christian coalition of now 36 members, including several Catholic groups and denominations. And we are so grateful for the peace building work that we're able to put forward. Our ultimate goal at Churches for Middle East Peace is to promote U.S. policies that lead to a just, holistic, and sustainable peace for all people in the broader Middle East and especially in Palestine and Israel. So we are so grateful to be here today. Welcome. If you have questions for us across this webinar and for our two fantastic panelists, feel free to use the Q&A feature or the chat to share those with us, and we'll have some time for Q&A after hearing opening remarks. But we're grateful to you for being here, and I am so glad now to turn the virtual microphone over to my colleague Julie to share a little bit about our Catholic Advisory Council and this series as a whole.
Thank you so much, Destiny. So yes, I'm proud and glad to be a member of the Catholic Advisory Council of CMEP. It is an extension of CMEP's work, but focusing specifically on engagement with U.S. Catholics to bolster Catholic engagement in the search for justice and peace in Palestine and Israel, and to accompany Christian communities in the Holy Land and bring voices from Palestine into our U.S. context. So again, we're so glad to be able to do this webinar series. The first one focused on health realities and healthcare challenges in Gaza and the West Bank. And today we're going to be talking about the state of education. And all together, we're really trying to, again, bring a focus on how faith-based institutions in the Holy Land are responding to the profound challenges facing Palestinians, wherever they are, under bombardment, under siege, under military occupation, ongoing violence and oppression. So we're really glad to have two people who are working on the front lines of humanitarian and justice efforts. Samuel Youssef of the Latin Patriarchate in Jerusalem, Brother Alejandro Serna of the Bethlehem University in the West Bank. And I'll introduce them in just a moment, and Destiny will introduce as well. As I said, they're going to be focusing on education. And I do want to just kind of reflect on, this is a time of year that many of us, including myself as a parent, are celebrating graduations and end of the school year. And we want to be sober about how so many students in Palestine are not able to attend or reach schools or graduate from a college or face very steep barriers in doing so, and also are resilient in what they are still able to do, because obviously education is such a big value. So we're glad to be able to gain a better understanding of all of these issues today, also in the context of what we know is so needed in terms of a permanent ceasefire in Palestine, Israel. So I want to say a little bit more about Sammy now and introduce him, and he's going to start things off, and then Destiny will introduce Brother Serna, and then all throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A tool. So Samuel Youssef is the Chief Executive Officer of the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem. He is a native and current resident of the Old City of Jerusalem, believing that the city should symbolize a shared space for all three religions living side by side in peace, harmony, and respect next to each other. Sammy previously studied in the United States. We were just talking about that before the webinar, where he received a bachelor's degree from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst and a master's degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Sammy served as the Catholic Advisory Council's inaugural speaker in the Father Drew Christensen Society of Jesus annual lecture series in 2022. So that was a wonderful way for us to bring him to the United States in person. I've had the pleasure of meeting Sammy in his Jerusalem offices and really to see firsthand the important work that he does on behalf of Palestinian Christians. And so again, he's going to start off, but Destiny is now going to introduce Brother Serna, and then they'll just go one after the other.
Thanks, Julie. And I'm so grateful to introduce to you also Brother Alejandro Serna. Brother Serna is the Dean of Education at Bethlehem University. He was born in Mexico and joined the Institute of the Brothers of Christian Schools at a young age. He holds bachelor's degrees in religious studies and educational sciences, higher diploma in historical educational research by the Universidad Alberta La Salle Andorra, and a master's degree in Lasallian leadership from St. Mary's University of Minnesota, as well as a second master's degree and doctorate from Universidad La Salle Noreste in Mexico. He has been a teacher at a number of levels, both primary and secondary, and has experience in the development and delivery of educational programs and projects in Mexico, Rwanda, and of course in the Holy Land, working with marginalized and impoverished populations. We are so grateful to have him with us today and to hear his remarks alongside Samuel Yusuf's. So thank you, Brother Serna, for being with us. And then Sammy, over to you.
Okay. Good evening from Jerusalem. I know it's still morning in the United States, so good morning to all of you. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today, just to highlight some of the, I think, challenges, aspirations that we have here in the Holy Land, in a relatively dear area to our hearts, education. Certainly, I think the Palestinian people value education to the limit, if you will. And I think as I go through some of my reflections on our situation, I think that will become clearer. So I'll focus basically on the status of education as far as the schools are concerned. And given that Brother Alejandro is in Bethlehem University, I think we agreed that he will focus more on the higher education sector. I will start by just giving a brief, I think, overview about the work of the Latin Patriarchate in the area of education. Certainly, I think Catholic education is a very broad sector that the Catholic Christian community provides to the Palestinian community at large. Not only to the Palestinian community, but throughout the Middle East in many ways. And the Latin Patriarchate is proud to have the largest network of schools, actually Catholic schools, serving in 4 countries, and in particular 44 such schools that are owned and administered by the Latin Patriarchate, and the breakdown of which is 13 of those schools operate in Palestine, 2 of them in Gaza. So I'll be talking a little bit more about the Gaza situation. 25 of those schools are in Jordan, 6 schools are in the Galilee in Israel. All in all, in total, we employ 1,715 employees, 78% of whom are Christian. We are considered the largest Christian employer in the Holy Land. And we serve 19,700 students in our 44 schools in total. The percentage of the Christian students is 55%, just a little over half of our student population is Christian. And that breakdown really varies from one country to the other, depending on the demographics of that country. So 34% of our student body is Christian in the state of Palestine, 56% in Jordan, and the highest percentage actually is in our schools in the Galilee at 82%. So it's a major contribution. Technically, 76% of our budgets as the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem goes to the education sector. So it's a huge investment for us in that sector. Some depressing, I think, statistics that I will share with you as far as the status of the education sector in the Gaza Strip in particular. Keep in mind that Gaza has about 2.3 million people in a small, relatively dense area of 364 square kilometers. So it's probably one of the most densely populated areas on Earth. And now it has become more dense in a sense, because what is going on now is that, the 2.3 million people, or maybe 2.2 million people now, are forced to live on only 25% of that. So you're talking about a fourfold, basically, of what used to be before the war. However, 658 school-aged children in Gaza are left with no access to schooling since October 2023. I think that would freak any parent, knowing that their children have not had any schooling for the past over some 18 months or so. 14,513 school children, as well as 672 educational staff, have been killed since the beginning of the war in October 2023. 22,422 students and 2,915 teachers were injured during the same period. 2,308 educational facilities have been destroyed. 501 out of 564, that's 89% of all schools, require full reconstruction, meaning they have been completely destroyed. Whatever remains of that sector basically is used as a shelter today, without much really of an educational process taking place. If we shift a little bit to the status of the schools on the West Bank, settler violence, unsafe roads, movement restrictions are affecting currently, these are all statistics according to United Nations sources, 806,000 students are impeded from a normal schooling. And that is the direct result of having 288 barriers, metal barriers that separate an area from another area within the West Bank. This is not separating people, Israel to Palestine or the West Bank. 288 barriers separating West Bank from West Bank, basically. So if you're going in, if you're familiar with the territory, if you're going from Beit Jala to Bethlehem, you may have a barrier going from one town to the next. That would not allow you to get through. In addition to 849 checkpoints scattered around the West Bank, has made it extremely difficult to have a normal school or schooling year, in a sense, on the West Bank. One example, the concrete example that we have really is in the northern part of the West Bank, in the Jenin Zababde neighborhood, basically, where Jenin refugee camp has been completely erased. Our school in Zababde is one of the largest Latin Patriarchate schools, having about 1,100 students. 400 of those students commute from Jenin, nearby Jenin, on a daily basis. So once you have these checkpoints and barriers and destruction of refugee camps ongoing, you can bet that that educational process is disrupted as well. So, I mean, the way you cope is you shift to online education the following day, hoping that people can still, hold an online class. But you need to also think about the quality of that education, about the trauma that students are facing, teachers are facing, parents are facing, really, to allow their children to go back and forth under extremely difficult and dangerous conditions. So the educational process on the West Bank has been disrupted since the beginning of the war, and keeps getting worse along the way. And when we're talking about destruction of refugee camps, so far we have between 40 and 50,000 people who have been uprooted from refugee camps, basically, and refugee camps are administered by UNRWA. UNRWA basically provides the educational and the health-related services in refugee camps. So you can bet that that process has been disrupted as well for the students that are actually attending UNRWA schools. And if we look at Jerusalem has been sort of at the forefront when it comes to the dismantling of UNRWA. And abruptly, about 2 weeks ago, the dismantling of UNRWA has been taking place for some time. It's not sort of an abrupt decision. However, the closure of the 6 UNRWA-administered schools in East Jerusalem was abrupt. They just walked in the school one day, 2 weeks ago, shut down the school, the campuses, and sent the students home and said, "Don't come back." And we're only about a month away from the end of the school year. So, why was it so important, really, to shut down a school a month before the school year ends? Is a mystery to me, in a sense. You could have even shut down a school in a more normal way, but that's not how Israel has decided to do it. So the status of education in general, whether you look at Gaza, the extreme case, the West Bank, or East Jerusalem, has been a disruptive year plus, in a sense, since October 2013. Just a little bit about the status of our 3 Catholic schools in Gaza. We have 3 schools. Basically, the first one is the Latin Patriarchate School at the Zaytun neighborhood, which is part of the parish complex. And that, I would say, really has been saved of any major destruction, in a sense, because it has been used as a shelter since the beginning of the war. However, given that it is being used as a shelter, it's impossible to use it as a school. We've had up to 700 people at some point at the beginning of the war sheltering in the complex, and then that number is down to about 450 people at the present time, but still utilizing most of the space that used to be a school prior to that. We have another school, the Holy Family School at the Rimal neighborhood in Gaza City, that has sustained major structural damage due to several periods of shelling. It wasn't just done, the damage wasn't just in one shot, basically. So it was back and forth. One time it was the kindergarten building that was destroyed. The next part, it was the top 2 floors, then the solar systems, and then the playgrounds, and so on and so forth. What is left of that really is utilized as a shelter for the neighborhood. Whatever remains of that sort of shattered school is used as a shelter, and there is no expectation that will be used as a school anytime in the near future. The third school, which is not under the administration of the Latin Patriarchate, but yet it's a Catholic school, is the Rosary Sister School. That is the largest of the Catholic schools in Gaza, and that is situated in Tel El Hawa neighborhood. That has 5 buildings, actually, state-of-the-art. Many of them are state-of-the-art, almost completely destroyed. Several shelling, planes, tanks, whatever you can think of, that school sustained. And at the present time, it's situated in what is termed as a military zone. So it's not used as whatever is left is not used as a shelter because no one can get there, in a sense. But that is totaled, in a sense, and that would require a major reconstruction to put any of those schools really back to operation. However, we didn't stand idly as all of this was happening. And I think the turning point started in May of 2024. It was roughly 7 months or 8 months into the war. And you may have heard that His Beatitude was one of the very few people that was able to get to Gaza, Cardinal Pizzaballa. And when he went in May of 2024, he spent about 4 days there under extremely challenging conditions of entry and exit and very, very dangerous circumstances. However, he came back to us really with one main thought, basically, and that was like a directive to all of us. He said when he met with all the people at the parish, and he spent 4 days with them there, their main demand was for education. He said they pleaded with me to start an educational process before they were asking for food or water or medicine. And that really touched his heart, touched all of us really deeply. And we truly felt that we have to do something about it. And given that a number of people at the parish ground really were teachers, former teachers at our schools that were still in our employ, technically, we initiated a remedial education initiative for the 180 students that were in the neighborhood technically. And that started in June of 2024 and expanded. And by September of 2024, they were able to follow the regular curriculum. So, they followed the curriculum and ended the school year shortly thereafter and was able to start a new school year. And we're extremely proud of that initiative, in a sense. That tells you a lot really about, the resilience of our people there. First, how Palestinian people value education truly. If you want your children to be educated first before you even think of feeding them or keeping them sort of safe, that says a lot, I think, about how much we value education. And since that time, we have continued basically with that initiative. And we will continue with that initiative until such time that we are able to resume a more normal educational process. And where that education is taking place, I mean, it's incredible. If you just listen to the stories, how they convert, the church and the convent, the priest convent and the sisters convent, and, any available space that is converted into a classroom in a very creative way during the day and turned over back as a shelter in the afternoon and evening hours. It's just heartbreaking, really, to listen to the resilience and the determination of people really to make it all happen. So that's Gaza for you in a sense, and education. Where I would like to sort of conclude to a certain extent really is on a more bright note. And that is really the value of a parish-based or a parish school and the Catholic education in a war zone or in a conflict area. And we have been in conflict, I think, for the duration of my lifetime. I tell you, I'm 65 years old. In 1967, I was a 7-year-old boy really on the streets of Jerusalem. And, I've witnessed every single war and crisis and intifada since that time. And we have always pulled through. So yes, this is more devastating. This is more difficult in a sense. However, the Christian education has been priceless throughout history as far as conflict zones are concerned. And it will continue to be, I think, priceless as we move forward. And if you think really of, where else will you hear the Christian value set, where the language of forgiveness, coexistence, respect, tolerance, love, peace, acceptance of the other, that are not only being taught, but are really lived. This is a lived experience, in a sense, for the children. Mostly Christian and Muslim. As I said, we're not here to serve our Christian community. If we are here to serve the Christian community alone, then we're not real Christians, in a sense, if you will. At a time when the language on the streets, you go out of that classroom, go out of that school, in a sense, and the language on the street is one of hatred and killing and revenge. And it's a stark difference, really, when you are on those campuses and you hear what transpires in terms of value formation on those campuses is just heartwarming. And one example really that stuck with me also of about 2 or 3 years ago, in particular, also involved an experience that his beatitude, Cardinal Pizzaballa, had to face, in a sense, when we were facing severe financial difficulties. That was a few years ago, and we were, pushed to a point really of considering maybe we should shut down one or two of these small schools, in a sense, that really are not carrying their weight. And we eyed one school in Ain Arik, which is very close to Ramallah on the West Bank, for closure. And there was no final decision, but the word got out that the school may be shut down. And the parents of the children in that school asked to meet his beatitude in a town hall style meeting, and he agreed. I mean, he's open to meet anyone who desires to meet him. So he went to Ain Arik and to listen to the parents, and surprisingly, it wasn't the Christian parents who were pleading not to shut down the school. I think they took us for granted, in a sense, that we'll find a solution for their children. It was the Muslim parents, basically. Ain Arik only has the Catholic school, the Latin Patriarchate school, and has one public school in particular. And they said, what will happen to our children if you decide to shut down the school? I mean, the only other alternative is to send them to the public school. And the public school teachers had some fundamental sort of orientations. And they said, you're really destroying the future of our children, taking them from this Catholic value-based education and putting them in a fundamental, radical environment is really destroying our children. And he came back and he said, forget about the idea of shutting down a school. It's impossible. That cannot be done. And that school really is flourishing and doing great today, 3 years later. So again, just to highlight really I think the importance, the value of what a Catholic Christian education means in practical terms in a war zone, and the importance really to sustain and keep our mission moving forward well into the future. I think I will end here with my 15 minutes and turn it over to Brother Alejandro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will continue with in the line that Sami was explaining. Catholic education is greatly appreciated in the Holy Land. It's extremely important. And families, including Muslim families, recognize the importance of the values, of the discipline, of the ethos of Christian schools, and choose to bring their children to Christian schools, which is a seed for fraternity, for conviviality, to be able to learn to live together in peace and in harmony. So I'm going to address some issues in general about education, then go a bit into the particular situation of higher education in the Holy Land, and try to give you a few numbers, not too many, and to get you up to date on what's happening now. Education in Palestine is very traditional. Many things in Palestine have to be left for later because we live in state of emergency. And when you have so many emergencies coming one after the other, important things that should be dealt with, that should be renewed, that should be redesigned, are just not. They get left for later, and education is certainly one of them. We have a very memory-oriented model of education that is not responding to current needs of the world and of the students. We have many teachers who are not professionally prepared for education or whose preparation is very weak. We have many teachers who are not educators as a basic formation, and then they get shorter diploma courses to be able to teach. But that means they don't address the philosophy behind education, the deeper issues of education, and that is a challenge as well. I have to say, I deeply admire in Palestinians and in my students, in university students in particular, that they come to university, they come every day to class in spite of the difficulties. Our students from Hebron used to take probably 40 minutes to come to university before the war. Now they're taking up to 3 hours because of the new checkpoints that have been set there. Our students from Jerusalem, same case, their time to arrive to university, some days is multiplied by 2 or 3. But they come to university, they're there on time, they do their work. And many of them are aware that unemployment rates in Palestine are incredibly high. And after the beginning of the war, more so. Thousands of people who had jobs on the Israeli side in Jerusalem were dismissed after the attacks of October 7. These were the people who had better salaries, because salaries on the Israeli side are much higher than they are on the West Bank. So economic crisis in Bethlehem, in particular, in the West Bank in general, is really, really serious right now. But so why are these students coming to get an education and doing so much effort to arrive, to come to university and to follow up with their studies? Many of them are aware that getting a job in the area that they are studying will be very difficult, if possible at all. Many of them know that they will end up working in their family businesses related to something else. But I think Palestine is one of the countries that has higher rates of education. You have a lot of people with university degrees, with postgraduate degrees. It's part of what they call their sumud, their resistance, resilience, their ability to keep going on. And I think, I don't know if they would be able to express it in these words, but what I get from my students is they've developed a sense that education is a way of self-care, of telling yourself, I am important. I want to study something that I love, that I like. I want to develop myself as a person. I want to grow as a person. And that's why you do it. And not only for a job. And I think that's a big difference from Western world and most parts of the world, where students in universities are really focused on job perspectives. That's not the case here. And I think it's admirable and it's fantastic that they find this way to demonstrate their love for themselves and for self-improvement. And they are very aware that many things can be taken away from them. We have students facing house demolitions. Just 2-3 weeks ago, notifications were sent about house demolitions coming in the Haitian camp, which is the largest refugee camp in Bethlehem, because the Israeli military wants to build a road in the middle of the camp, so houses are going to be demolished. Some of those houses are our students. Some of those houses are our teachers and our staff. And so their houses can be taken away, their freedom can be taken away, their lives can be taken away, but their education cannot be taken away. It's something they keep. And so they value it greatly, and I think that's worth noting. I've spoken with the principals of the UNRWA schools, and they are doing the best they can, but they expressed to me the need to develop their teachers in education for peace, for dialogue, for dealing with this situation we're going through. Right now at Bethlehem University, we have a research project that we happened to start right before COVID. So we had pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID, pre-war, war, post. We hope to have it post-war soon. In continuation of this project about human rights in education, and we have some evidence of the effects that this situation is having in children. We have children asking their parents to sleep in their beds again, children who were already sleeping in their own rooms and want to go back to the parents' room. We have children who are asking their parents to add more bolts and locks to the doors as a way to feel more security. We have one particularly heartbreaking testimony of a mother who told us that her child, 5-year-old child, or maybe 4, told her, "Mom, you really should have more children. So if I get killed, you won't be so sad." And so these are things that our students are going through. It's what they see on TV. It's what they hear in conversations. Parents try to shelter them, to shield them from all this, to more or less effectiveness. But we need to develop education in Palestine in a way that helps us not only teach math and science, but also teach emotional intelligence and teach trauma-informed education and education for peace, education for dialogue. There's big challenges there. But to get there, we need deep reflection in education and deep redesign in education that we don't have the resources, the time, the personnel to do right now. Palestine has 14 universities, 1 open university, and 38 other higher education institutions that give professional diplomas, the different kind of accreditations. Out of 19 that have some presence in Gaza, 11 have been completely destroyed. The others, up 80% or more destruction. 60 university buildings are completely demolished. 90,000 students in Gaza are without classes. I'm talking about higher education students. 4 university presidents have been killed in the numbers we have so far. 5 deans and at least 117 professors. These are just the confirmed numbers. Other people might be under the rubble or unaccounted for that we don't know about yet. Certainly, many students have been killed. The number I have is from a year ago, and it was in almost 5,500 university students. So that's for sure higher now. And this is what the world is now calling scholasticide, the killing of education and the killing of educational opportunities, infrastructure, the people involved, the termination of those opportunities and possibilities. Teacher training is also one of the challenges. I lead the Faculty of Education in Bethlehem, so I should be very aware of that. It's very important. Oh, I think the internet is going slow. Can you hear me still?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a lot of universities offering educational degrees. Not all of them to the quality that we would like, and so we end up competing with each other unnecessarily at some point. We need more quality, not more programs. We have in universities in particular some professors that are already retired, and out of respect or deference, we keep them working at the universities. But that means we're not opening jobs and opportunities for younger people who have the necessary degrees and might be and are certainly interested to come and work. The Ministry of Education itself, there's a lot of renewal needed there. There's a lot of people there who are there as part of the political careers more than education related actually efforts and tracks. Um, right now we're facing there's a new law trying to be passed on the Israeli side. It passed already the first stage, and they want to disavow, to not recognize any university degree coming from Palestinian universities in the area of education. So this is not a fact yet. It's a law in process of approval. But if that happens, that would be a huge blow on our university and a huge blow on Palestinian education in general. There's problems, of course, with academic freedom. You have the students and professors who express any kind of dissidence, resistance, etc., online can be arrested, have faced serious consequences for simply expressing their opinion and what they're going through. Julie mentioned at the beginning that you are in times of graduation. I wanted to mention that we are in times of graduation, but we didn't have graduation last year. We are not sure whether we're going to have a graduation this year, and if we have it, we're going to, I mean, the graduation ceremony, and if we have it, it's going to be very toned down because we cannot put together a real celebration when our brothers and sisters are dying so close by and so cruelly. And so we want to recognize and celebrate the achievement of our students. We understand how important that is for their families, but the families themselves are not sure how to do a little celebration while such terrible things are happening nearby. So we greatly appreciate the manifestations of support that we've seen across the world in US campuses. We have at Bethlehem University a map of places around the world that have manifested and demonstrated in favor of Palestine to remind our students that there's people supporting them, that there's people there who care, that there's people who are doing what they can in their own contexts. And this is hugely important. This is of great support. We need to build an education not only that solves the current problems, but that allows for a different future to come by. And Bethlehem University is the only Catholic university in the Holy Land. There's two other Christian universities, the Bible College in Bethlehem and Dar al-Kalima. And then there's many Catholic higher education institutions, but focused on biblical studies or theology, specialized more for priestly formation, ministerial formation. But as a university, what we think of a usual university, we are the only one in the Holy Land. And we are the only one, as far as I know, in which Muslims and Christians study religion together. Because even in Catholic schools for religion class, and we give them their space. So Muslim students have their class with their teacher, Christian students have their class with their teacher. But at the university, once the students have grown a bit more, have a bit more criteria, critical thinking, we put them together, and we have a course that is taught half by a Muslim scholar, half by a Christian scholar, and in which both have to learn and deepen what they know and what they understand about their own religion and the religion of the other. So we can actually start sowing seeds of hope, of conviviality, of collaboration. And in our case, Mr. Sami was mentioning about 50% of Muslim and Christian students in schools. In universities, that's different. We have about 80% Muslim students at Bethlehem University, almost there. But still, the number of 20% Christians is a high number if you compare it with the Christian population overall in the surrounding area in Israel and in Palestine. And so we have enough Christian students so they can have a youth group, organize a prayer together, go on a retreat. We had a little group of students who recently went to Teze, or who's going to attend World Youth Day. But also we have enough Christian students so that all of our Muslim students can meet them and work with them and share classes with them and debunk the myths we have about each other. Because we have Muslim students who come from cities or villages that have no Christian presence and who have never met a Christian in the flesh before. So coming to the university is their first opportunity to encounter a Christian face to face. And sometimes some of the Muslim students come and say, brother, they're Palestinian like me. They like the same food. They like the same music. Absolutely. And providing them that space, that opportunity to discover that is incredibly important. This is how we build for the future. And we try to bring about something different, something hopeful. Palestine, of course, in terms of higher education, experiences great brain drain. People leave the country looking for other opportunities. As I mentioned, the situation with employment is very, very tough. And so students go abroad to study and sometimes stay there. But we also have these Palestinian resistance and resilience and love for the land that is manifest. One of our students recently went in exchange to Poland, and he was telling the story. He said, honestly, I wanted to find in Poland a master's program that I could follow and just find a job and stay there and forget about restrictions and limitations and all the problems I have in the Holy Land. But he said, but I met the Palestinian community in Poland, many of whom have never been to the Holy Land, and whose life dream would be to visit Bethlehem, to visit Jerusalem, to come and see the Sea of Galilee. And he said, because of what I saw in them, now I want to come back to the Holy Land and stay here. And so these are little stories that I think are showcasing a reality that we have here, the struggle of a very, very difficult situation, but a very, very strong, resilient people who love their land, who love their families and traditions, and who keep going on. And as Sami said, I also believe that they have overcome so many things until today, and they will continue to overcome things, this current crisis and whatever the future brings, which I hope the future brings some very different opportunities and more luminous scenarios. I appreciate that Julie, in the beginning of this conversation, was pointing out the need for a ceasefire. It's incredibly important. It is certainly needed. But we need something beyond that. We don't need only a ceasefire. We need peace. We need a model that allows us to solve this and not to push the problem again until the next eruption, the next conflict, the next time that things get really, really problematic. And so, well, this is part of the picture that I wanted to paint for you and share with you, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. Just to hear the context in the different seats that you're sitting in both the West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza. So I really, you've given a very rich explanation. As one of our participants said, it's to talk about education at this time of starvation and destruction, but yet you are providing us hope in the work that you do and in the students that you're giving hope to us. I just want to invite people now. We do see some comments here. If you have a specific question, we can take those now for our speakers, for either or for both of them. You have a question here about what the relationship is between the Latin Patriarchate schools in the West Bank and Gaza to the Palestinian Authority, and any guidelines from the PA, and do families pay tuition for these schools, or how does that work in terms of how the education is provided?
Sure. I mean, the relationship with the Palestinian Authority is what would normally be a relationship between any educational sector and the government, in a sense. The curriculum is set by the government. Many accreditation issues, licensing issues, and so on and so forth are tied to the government, as you would have in any normal society, in a sense. So that would be the relationship. As far as the tuition is concerned, I think the tuition is set independently. However, as parish priests, as parish schools, our tuition is set at a very low rate, in a sense, compared to some of the other Catholic schools or other private schools. The tuition would probably be around anywhere between $700 per year to no more than $1,000 per year per student. But keep in mind that all of that education is subsidized. So many of our students, even with that low tuition rate, cannot afford the tuition and end up being subsidized by various schemes. The difference certainly between the Palestinian Authority and Israel per se, because we do have the schools in the Galilee, that system is supported by the government of Israel, by the education ministry in Israel, basically. So there are monthly subsidies, annual subsidies to cover most of the operational costs of the schools in Israel. Yet in Palestine, certainly, I mean, with the Palestinian Authority almost on the verge of bankruptcy, basically, they do not have any subsidies to give to the schools. So we're independent, really, as far as the finances are concerned.
If I could continue with that, there's a mandatory contribution that the government should give universities, but they have been reducing it since 2016, and they haven't given any of it in the last year since the pandemic. So that's, of course, a difficulty for the operation of the university in this case. And schools that are on the Israeli side have some support from the government, as Sami mentioned. They also have restrictions in terms of curricula, and so there's other kinds of pressures that they are subjected to.
Thank you both. Another question that we've had come in through the Q&A asks about Orthodox Christian communities and wants to know if Orthodox communities have any of their own schools or if they also are attending some of the Catholic schools and educational opportunities.
The Orthodox too, I mean, all other churches, including the Orthodox, most other churches do run a network of schools. I think the Orthodox have several schools, but at a much lower number, in a sense. And some of the other schools as well, like the Greek Catholic, the Melkite network of schools. You have the congregational, such as Del Sal, Rosary Sisters School, schools, Catholic certainly, but also you have the Armenian schools and the Coptic schools and so on and so forth. So most of the denominations have run schools in a sense, but the largest network is the Catholic school network, totaling about 105 schools in the Holy Land.
Another question that's come in is what can concerned Americans do to help Palestinian students? And I do want to underscore here, I was really heartened, Brother Alejandro, by your map of that you have, where the students at Bethlehem University can see where the students in the United States have protested and lifted their voices. So are there other ways, or what some of the ways that concerned Americans can help Palestinian students? For both of you.
I think from my vantage point, really, I think solidarity, and getting the word out, really. The more people that are aware of the reality on the ground, really, the more friends that we will have around the world. And there has to be some political pressure, really, on the leadership on two fronts, basically. This war must stop. There is no reason why this continues to go on. It has fulfilled all its military objectives in a sense, and now it is turned on civilians. It is only civilians who are suffering, especially in Gaza in a particular way. So, there has to be political pressure. The world has to stand up and say enough is enough. There is absolutely no reason to continue with what is happening. I mean, some people call it genocide, some people call it war crimes, some people call it ethnic cleansing. I don't care what you want to call it or what the terminology suits you best, in a sense, in terming it, but it has to stop. It's ugly, it's nasty, and it has to stop. That is number one, really. And as Brother Alejandro mentioned, we cannot continue not to have a political solution that would solve our problem once and for all. There has to be justice and peace in the Holy Land. There has to be freedom for the Palestinian people. We have to fulfill the aspirations of the people. And more and more importantly, really, there has to be some sort of a embargo, boycott, in terms of really sending weapons to the region. Enough is enough. The weapons have to stop. And that would be the only guarantee that some direction is forced on all parties, really, to move in that direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. Solidarity is the most important thing. Please advocate, please put pressure on governments, on different institutions. Be vocal, share with friends. If you doubt about something, investigate, ask, find the truth. It's important to get informed. Thank you for organizing spaces like this that are very helpful in that way. There's, of course, the possibility of financial support. Both the Latin Patriarchate, the university, and other institutions have great challenges in being able to provide all the services we want to provide, we currently provide. And sometimes we cannot provide more because of the limitations of resources. So that is always helpful. But yeah, the human side of it is also very important. So please keep up being vocal and demonstrating and putting pressure on governments, and be ready to help Gaza when that's possible. Right now, Gaza is almost inaccessible, or completely inaccessible, actually. But as soon as it opens, as soon as something changes, we need to move really, really fast. And I think Bethlehem University and the Latin Patriarchate, we're already in conversations about it, need to act really quickly to get in and help people. We have actually some students from Gaza studying at Bethlehem University online, but they don't have internet all the time. It's very, very hard. And so as soon as that's possible, we'll have to do something. And now Tulkarem and other Jenin, they're going in similar situations. So the Catholic relief services are also challenged to respond to all of these needs. So in any way you can help. If you are educators, if you have experience in trauma-informed education, if you have experience in development of critical thinking, emotional intelligence through education, maybe you can come visit, share your ideas, share your articles, join the research. I saw in the chat somebody was interested on the research. If you want to write to Bethlehem University, you can find our information there. I'll be happy to connect you with the main researcher, and so you can follow up with that. And so, yeah, depending on your profile and your skills, maybe there's other ways in which you can help.
We have one other question here I'm seeing asking about outreach that Bethlehem University students with Jewish students at Israeli universities. And of course, we know that there's many opportunities that can flow from dialogue. There's also limits to dialogue, especially in moments of extreme injustice. So how do you see that? Maybe even if there's been opportunities in the past, what maybe has been useful or fruitful in that?
Okay, it's very difficult. There is a law in the West Bank that supports the BDS movement, so tries to avoid what we call normalization, and which is trying to pretend like nothing's happening and just continuing with life. And because of that, we cannot have any institutional relationship with Israeli institutions. With people to people, that happens. We have people who live, half of our students at Bethlehem University live in Jerusalem, so they are in contact with Israelis all the time. So that happens, but we don't have shared projects in that way. We do have at the university a course on Judaism for our students of religious studies. We've had in the past a Jewish scholar from the States who visited the university and had a lovely conversation with our students about the situation and about the advocacy that she does. And so we're happy to engage with Jewish people and to try to work together. Some of our students participate in other organizations for peace. Some of our alumni are among the starters of Freedom Movement and other organizations in Palestine that have collaboration with activists and seekers of peace on the Israeli side. But institutionally, we cannot do it in Bethlehem.
And you make an important point too of that sort of co-resistance of people coming together in a way that they can resist together the occupation and injustices. That's a very important opportunity. Let's see here. There's something else coming in. And Destiny, if you have any questions too, feel free. I know we have just basically 2 or 3 minutes. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we are coming up on the end of our time together, but I thought as a closing question, and both of you touched on this maybe a bit, but in these times of devastation and sorrow and lament, what's giving you hope in the educational space in the Holy Land right now? And maybe we'll close on that note with each of you.
For me, to be honest with you, when we go on field visits every now and then, and we visit the schools and you see the children, despite all the difficulties, the joy in their face, on their faces, really the energy level, you would think there is no occupation, there is no limits, there are no problems, there is no war going on. And that's where you get your sense of hope, really, is that, education is giving the hope, just like the faith is giving us hope in a sense. But once you put the two together, education and faith is where hope stems as far as we're concerned. And these, oasis really that you see in various pockets all over the place really is what truly gives you hope. And we're truly hopeful that this will be behind us soon and we'll be stand on our 2 feet and will help build society on the right track. And hopefully, the independent future state of Palestine will still be a hope that we will not give up on.
Thanks so much, Sammy. And Brother Serna.
Yeah, I would agree on the first part that certainly our students would be, and the people in general would be the first source of hope. They're fantastic people. They're joyful people who find a way to smile and keep on with life in spite of everything that's happening around. So that is amazing and heartwarming and just fantastic. A second thing is, I think the awareness on the Palestinian issue is on the rise. And we were put in the back burner for a long time. This is a very lengthy conflict. But now a lot of people who were not aware before and who had not learned about it is learning. So that is also a source of hope. And then I think also Jesus moves the question from who's my neighbor to who was I neighbor to. So I think more and more people can ask themselves that instead of who's my neighbor so I can help them, who do I decide to be the neighbor to? So we start building peace in our lives and with the people close to us. We hope that'll grow.
Thank you both so much. And thank you for your work, for being with us. And I think this was a really, really great conversation. We're so grateful to you for sharing your voices and, of course, for all that you are doing in the field of education in Palestine today. And I'll give Julie the last word if you want to say something about our final session of our mini course.
Yes. And thank you again to both of you. I'm taking different words, but your solidarity, Sammy, and Brother Serna lifting up the Palestinian practice of samud and steadfastness. This is whenever we get hopeless in the United States, which we have no business doing, we find so much hope in the work that you all are doing. And so thank you again. Yes, for our listeners, our third installment of this will be on June 11th, and our focus is going to be on human rights in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, religious freedom, legal challenges, and the status quo. And our guest then will be Raful Rofa, the director of the Society of St. Ives, which is a Jerusalem human rights-based organization which works under the Latin Patriarchate, right, Sammy? Yes.
Correct. Yes.
And Yusuf Daher, Jerusalem Voice for Justice, which is an ecumenical group that is raising the voice of Holy Land Christians on these various issues. So we're excited to have them join us on June 11th. So thank you again, Sammy, Brother Serna. You are in our prayers, and we will continue the work that we do here in the United States in solidarity for a permanent ceasefire and for a just peace for Palestine and for Palestinians and Israelis in the future. And thank you all for joining us once again.
Thank you.
You all.
Thank you so much.